You've entered Bookstorm with Kristen Civiletto and me, Chris Storm. This is a podcast devoted to best-selling books that matter, books that make a difference. We're diving down deep with beloved authors about their stories. We're exposing hot-button topics and heartfelt themes, the issues that affect each of us in our own lives, as siblings, parents, partners, friends, as human beings. We're braving new ideas, fresh thoughts, hard lessons, and important truths. Those kinds of things that stay with us long after we turn the last page and close the book. Welcome to Bookstorm, listeners. This is the one you've been waiting for. We have the amazing Nina DeGramont with us today. You also may know her as Marina Gessner. She's the author of 8 novels, 4 for young adult readers and 4 for grown-ups. Her latest novel, The Christie Affair, is an instant New York Times bestseller. We're here to talk to her about that book that Kristen and I love. She's also the author of the acclaimed Meet Me at the River, Every Little Thing in the World, Gossip of the Starlings, The Last September, and The Distance from Me to You, which recently was optioned for a film. We can't wait for that one. The Christie Affair, as I said, is an instant New York Times bestseller. Reese Witherspoon and her book club says this is true for true crime aficionados. This book is for everyone. It's an unexpected mix of historical fiction and romance, heartbreak and revenge based on true happenings. Reese found herself binging on this book in one sitting, and Reese, Kristen, and I would like to say so did we. We could not put it down. Kristen Hanna, who we all know is a number one New York Times bestselling author, says that this book is an absolute marvel. So thank you. Nina is here with us today. She lives on the coastal North Carolina with her husband, the writer David Gessner. She teaches at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and is almost always in the company of her 2 dogs, Missy and Isabella. Welcome, Nina. Thrilled to have you with us today.
Thank you, Chris and Kristen, so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, we're so happy you're here. Nina, we'd like to give our listeners just a little bit of a taste of what the book is about. And so if you'll indulge me, I just want to summarize it without giving away any spoilers, which let me tell you was difficult to do because at every turn we had things I didn't necessarily see coming. Chris and I always talk about that when we discuss books. But in The Christie Affair, your psychological suspense novel, it is a thrilling and provocative backstory behind the real-life 11-day disappearance of one of the world's most famous mystery writers, Agatha Christie. The story is primarily from the viewpoint of Nan O'Day, the other woman in Agatha Christie's marriage. And at first, we want to dismiss Nan as only that, the other woman. She's after Agatha's husband. We think maybe she's motivated by jealousy or attraction. But as the story unravels and we dive into some of Nan's deepest hurts, we start to see so much more. She is fueled by something else entirely, and it's something that could potentially justify revenge, maybe even murder. This story unfolds like one of Agatha Christie's own murder mystery novels. It pulls us in, it gives us clues along the way, and it surprises us at every turn. So with that, are we ready to brave the storm?
I sure am. I can't wait to talk about this book, of course, without giving any spoilers, because in every mystery, that's half the fun for the reader. And you have given us all kinds of clues and bunny trails that allow the reader to aid in the unraveling of this mystery. And that makes for the best suspense novel that there is. So my first question to you is, Nan O'Day, as Kristen just said, is a character that we first want to hate, but then we actually grow to love. She views Agatha Christie's troubles in this way, and I want to quote, I love this phrase, determination, born of desperation, transformed into purpose. Agatha Christie had that kind of determination that you could only recognize if you feel it yourself. This was because the character Nan had this same kind of determination. She was fueled by an injustice done to her, and she set out to right this horrible wrong. But the reader cannot help but see something more to this quest. We found how easy it could be to fall into the trap of seeking justice, fighting for what we know we deserve, even if we end up harming people in our pathway. And I wondered, you as the writer, what redeeming qualities were you trying to show the reader about Nan and maybe about all of us?
First of all, thank you so much for all your kind words. I was having so much fun listening to you two talk about the book. I'm entering the conversation reluctantly.
I love that.
And that's such an interesting question. And it makes me think about what is, like, how responsible is the person writing the book for driving the narrative in a way that pushes the reader toward a specific point of view. I think that my primary goal was to tell a story that had different angles, different areas of complexity, and hopefully present it in a way that was nuanced enough that the reader could make up her own mind about that question. I mean, I knew that the biggest challenge in taking on a first person narrative from the mistress's point of view, and just that word can put a lot of our hackles up. So I knew that I needed to give her not only a sympathetic backstory that was connected to her motivations, but also let her really be aware of the damage she was doing. It was really important that she like and admire Agatha in order to take on the telling of her story. So I feel like once I put all those pieces into place, the rest is really up for the reader to decide whether it's okay or justified or any of those things.
And you do let the reader do that. And so I'm coming away from this story sort of still loving Nan, who is the mistress, because any really good villain has something good about them too. And we see her story unfold, and I don't want to give too much away. From the very beginning, like any real person, we understand why she's behaving in this way because of things that she went through. And it
Right.
caused the reader maybe to be a little more aware of empathy and understanding before we so quickly judge. And you're right, you did a beautiful job with the unfolding of this story and the weaving of these very different personalities together. And I did love that they had a kinship, these two women. They inherently liked each other in some strange ways. And that was sort of the fun of it, too, to see that they even saw behind the facade of who they were trying to be to who they really were. That's something that's not easily to be accomplished, and you did it so beautifully. Thank you for that. You gave the reader a lot to think about.
Yeah, these
Thank you
characters
so much.
matched wits.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Agatha Christie really, I mean, one of the reasons it was appealing to imagine this point of time when she disappeared after her marriage fell apart was to think about her being so vulnerable. When, we always think of her as this strong, iconic figure with a stiff upper lip. And, never had her upper lip been less stiff, I imagine, than during these 11 days. So I think that most of us have had our hearts broken, and most of us have been in a place where it seemed like our world was falling apart. And, Rumi said the crack is where the light gets in. So it was fun and interesting to imagine her being in a place where so much light was getting in that she could also sympathize with the person who was in a large part causing all the upheaval.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. In fact, I want to dive in a little further on that because I was really thinking about the justification for wrongs. You know, sometimes wrongs are black and white, right? We know this is a wrong thing, a bad thing, you should never do this. But sometimes there's gray area in choices that people make. A lot of times there's gray area. And we can see there's some mitigating factors. We can kind of excuse what happened. And I wanted to kind of explore that with you because you really took on a big issue, one that, as first of all, a reader, um, you know, I've been in these shoes. I understand the betrayal and the hurt. So for me to try to empathize with somebody who, in my mind, has done something that there's never an excuse for, I think that's a great feat that you accomplished where I could even in any way empathize with this character. But I wanted to ask you, you know, just in your own mind, were you exploring whether or not there's a justification for lying, for deceit? And what about when it's striking at the heart of a family?
I think the key word there is sometimes. Um, and I don't know if, I mean, there's so many mitigating circumstances in the world that we can't even possibly dream up or imagine. But that's why, even the legal system has something called justifiable homicide. So, I mean, if there's justifiable homicide, there must be justifiable husband stealing, right? um, I just think every circumstance is different. Every marriage is different. Every love triangle is different. It's unrealistic to think that in every situation where there's a wife, a husband, and a mistress, that the wife is an angel and the mistress is a devil. Um, so I mean, I guess the answer is yes. And I don't know again that I'd use the word justifiable as much as I'd use the word understandable. I think that's what sort of the responsibility of a novelist is to sort of lay out the situation, lay out the characters, shed light on the motivation, so that the reader understands it a little better. And I will say that, again, in terms of the challenge of making Nan a character readers were willing to listen to, um, I tried to employ different tricks, and one of them was making it clear that she was narrating the story from a distance of many years. So from a place where this had all worked out. And, she could come in and say, Agatha was better off without Archie. I mean, once she shed him, that's when her real success and her real adventurous life began in earnest. So I think it was helpful to be able to sort of tell the reader, for all the pain that's being caused right now, she's going to be okay. She's going to be better off.
You know, we have another concept in the law, and that is the slippery slope. That once you start going down that pathway, you could end up in a place you maybe don't expect. And
Yeah,
and I really love how you explored that because, you know, there are excuses sometimes we tell ourselves to justify our behavior, but then there are understandable circumstances. And I think a lot of life is weighing where we are on that slope and
right.
different circumstances. I thought that was fascinating.
It was.
And it's the
Or
trick of, sorry, it's the trick of specifics. We can always name a situation and immediately come to a determination how we feel about it. But once you sort of start learning the specific details, your mind might change and your sympathies might move.
and let's hope that they would. I thought this book gave us hope that we shouldn't be too rigidly set in specific opinion, and maybe we should open our minds up to other possibilities. This made me think so strongly about a quest for the greater good. And in that greater good, along the way, there may be things that you would not normally have approved of or done, but it's minor compared to the greater good that would be achieved. And this can be seen in so many things in life: medicine, politics, uh, all kinds of things. That's what this book did. It really opened the reader's mind up a little and changed their capability of perception, perceiving things a certain way. Just loved it.
Thank you.
The other thing that really stood out to me in this book was this phrase that was used, and I'm going to quote, "the age of disappearing women." It broke my heart. it was an era, it was around 1926, I believe, and young pregnant women who were being secretly sent away and forced to abandon their infants. This still maybe happens today. I wish it didn't. But there was another quote where they said, "We disappeared from school, from hometowns, from our families and jobs. One day we would be going about our business, sitting in class or laughing with friends or walking hand in hand with a beau, and then poof." The reader became so hurt and angry beside the character Bess. This character was sent to a convent for unwed mothers, and really horrific things were done to her. I can't give any spoilers. But my first thought was, where's the father? Where's the justice? Where are her rights? But in order for us to understand what a woman in 1926 endured, you as the author had to make us feel it. And that's something that you achieved. So my thought was, the shame of unwed mothers, are we done with it today? Are we still something we're enduring? And was this a theme that you were hoping to bring out, or did it just sort of transform as you wrote the book?
It was definitely something I wanted to incorporate from the beginning. I think, Agatha Christie disappeared almost 100 years ago. And I think among the reasons that it holds such glamour and interest for us now is usually when a woman disappears, it's not only is it not on her own, of her own volition and under her own steam, but oftentimes, most times, she doesn't turn up whole and safe and well with everything that she left with, Either she disappeared because of some kind of domestic violence, or for decades and decades and decades, all over the world, she was unmarried and pregnant and had to be hidden away somewhere until the baby was born before she could return or never return. But if she did return, it was almost always without that child. So I definitely, and Agatha Christie in her own writing is really interested in class differences and different levels of privilege. So I wanted to show a contrast where, there's certain things Nan can understand about Agatha's disappearance. And there are certain things that she can not understand and not sympathize with because of the difference in terms of the choices Agatha had that Nan didn't have when she disappeared. As far as whether it still goes on today, I would imagine it depends to some degree on where you live in the world. I mean, it seems like in the United States, certainly the stigma is all but gone. And I imagine that's the case in most of Europe, but honestly, I don't know, because what I mostly studied was the era when it wasn't accepted. I hope so. I hope we're past it, but I think it's really important to remember it and read stories about the things that happen to women and realize that, The Handmaid's Tale is not our terrifying possible future. It's our terrifying certain past. And the last, so this was happening all over the world. It happened in the US, it happened in England, it happened in Australia. I focus on what was going on in Ireland with mother and baby homes and the Magdalen laundries. The last Magdalen laundry closed in 1996.
Wow.
So this is not, it's not a century ago.
Wow. I almost think there is a modern day corollary, and that is pregnant women statistically are at their most vulnerable in terms of domestic violence and, abuse from a partner. And
Yeah.
I think that maybe is a different angle on a similar issue, and that is this vulnerability, this lack of respect. So that your discussion really just made me think of that, because we know those statistics and they're alarming.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we love about historical fiction in particular, is that you've taken some truths from the past that still apply to present day. And when we say we hope that doesn't go on anymore, it's books like this that call it to our attention and say, hey, it was real. And maybe it still is real. And if it is, let's stop it, at
Right.
least in our own lives and in our own minds. Let's put an end to it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, too.
Yeah, I want to go back to this 11-day disappearance. You know, it's an enduring mystery. Nobody exactly knows, as you pointed out in some of your notes. But really, it's one of the only unsolved mysteries associated with Agatha Christie because her novels did button up at the end. We know, you know, who did it. We know by the end of the story. And I was wondering if you think we all long to maybe flip the script in our own lives because you offer that possibility that maybe that is what Agatha Christie was doing, and that is flipping the script in her life and maybe getting outside of her persona and doing something different. Do we all long for that, do you think? Do you think maybe that's what happened here?
Oh, I mean, I think under the best of circumstances, when things fall apart, um, along with everything that you don't want to lose, you find yourself shedding things that weren't of any use to you. It's interesting that she claimed to have no memory of what had happened, and claimed that she was suffering from amnesia and in a kind of fugue state um, during her disappearance, and that's why she didn't come forward. And I don't know that I necessarily believe that she was suffering from amnesia, but I think there's something to that fugue state. Um, when you're experiencing so much emotional upheaval and nothing makes sense anymore, and you have to sort of make a new kind of sense. um, I think that at a certain level of personal lows, all kind of rules disappear, and you can create something new. I will say that the things that history really doesn't know about the disappearance are that they don't know, her car was found near her home in Surrey or in Berkshire. And her belongings were left in the car, and then she was found in Yorkshire. So nobody knows how she got from that car late at night to this hotel the next day. And nobody knows why she didn't come forward when she must have known everyone was looking for her because it was the headline of all the newspapers. But they do know that she was at a spa, which is, I think, where we all want to go.
Yeah.
And life throws us a bad knock. So that part's completely understandable.
I love this little disappearance. And a part of me wondered if Agatha Christie, because she was such a sleuth detective mystery writer, if she almost didn't set this up to make us all become detectives, the wondering of where she was. It was so very much like what she wrote about, the unsolving of this mystery. It gives the reader all sorts of ideas and thoughts and hypotheses on our own. And I guess it's sort of a beautiful thing that we don't really know. We don't really know the answer.
It's funny because while I was writing the book, I really tried to stay away from other fictionalizations and other people's theories about what might have been going on while she was gone, because I didn't want any other ideas to infiltrate the story I was trying to tell. So even the book I used to research what was going on in the search is called Agatha Christie and the 11 Missing Days by Jared Cade. And the first 90 pages detailed the search, and what was in the paper and sort of the logistics of the police search and all that. And then the second 2/3 of the book are his theories about what might have been going on. And I didn't even read that. I read up to like page 90 and then stopped. But then since the book has been written, I've heard a few more theories about, her motives and what she might have been trying to do. And one of the things I thought was really interesting, there was a review of the Christie Affair in the Washington Post. And the woman who wrote the review said, so when Agatha Christie was found at the spa, she registered using the last name of her husband's mistress. And Maureen Corrigan, who wrote that review, said she believes that the reason she did that was because Archie Christie was really determined to keep his mistress's name out of the divorce. Like he didn't want her reputation sullied at all. He was very protective of her. So according to this theory, the reason she registered at the hotel under the mistress's last name was to sneakily get it out there into the papers.
I love that. Good for you, Agatha.
Yes. Speaking of justifiable.
That's right.
Well, we loved every ounce of it. Readers, pick it up, read it. We wish we could talk about so many more things, but we don't want to give any spoilers because that is just the absolute treasure and fun of this book. And Nina, can you tell us what's on your radar? Can you give us any clues? Are you working on anything else right now?
I am, but I'm not at a place where I can talk about it yet. But
Okay.
you can read one of my old books if you
Okay, we sure
having a
will.
hard time waiting.
And I hope a film. I love that this is option for a film, and we're all going to go and check that out right away. So let me say for our listeners, you're going to want to reach out and connect with Nina DeGramont. You can find her on ninadeGramont.com. She's also on Twitter and Instagram. And remember, she's also known as the author Marina Gessner. Thank you so much for joining us today. We just love talking.
So much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure meeting you.
Bye.
Yes, I wish we could say everything that we found in this book and give away all the spoilers right now because I am such a suspicious person, and usually I can figure out any mystery movie within the first 5 minutes. It drives my husband crazy. I'll say, I know who did it. He'll say, don't tell me, I don't want to know. And in this book, I had some things figured it out that were not right, but then I looked back and saw the clues that had been given to me, and Nina made it fair. She gave you enough clues to be able to decipher and unravel this mystery if you're savvy enough, and that's what I loved about it. One thing that I just want to say a little bit more about our discussion was something that she touched upon. So the character in this book went through a lot of pain and hurt. And in the end, she picked someone that she wanted to be married to, but she admitted she didn't love them. And my question to you, Kristen, is this is an interesting concept. If you have a life filled with pain and hurt that you haven't overcome, are you capable of really loving someone?
Okay, that is a fantastic question, and I'm going to say no. No, because here's something that somebody said to me once and has always stuck with me. And that is when you go into a relationship and you are a broken person, you are hurting, you're not a whole person, I think you will spend that entire relationship trying to get what you need from the other person to rebuild yourself and become whole. And I don't think we can do that. We can't heal ourselves through other people. I think it is to their detriment. So can you? Sure, you can try. But should you? No. I think we need to really focus on that inward healing before we enter the relationship so that we have the capacity to love and to do it in a way that is not harmful to the other person. What do you think?
I agree with you. So you're saying in a way that you have to learn to love yourself before you can love someone else. We don't love ourselves every minute of every hour of every day, but you have to come to terms with past hurts, hurtful experiences, wounds, and deal with them and learn to maybe coexist with them if you can't forget them, which most of us can't. But I like that you said that. And because the last thing you want to do as the character in this book is go into a relationship just taking.
Yes.
And you're going to solve my problems. And that would almost, I could say, could almost be a form of emotional abuse, couldn't it?
It absolutely is, because you may not consciously think, I'm going to get that affirmation from this person I didn't get from my mother or my father. But subconsciously, that's exactly what you're doing. You're putting your hurts into the relationship and I think addressing them. Now, I'm not a psychologist, but I do see, lots and lots of conflict as an attorney. That's what I deal with. And a lot of conflict stems from these very unmet needs, psychologically and otherwise, that people are putting on others in a partnership, in a marriage, in a relationship. And we see some of these same patterns play over and over and over and over. I think divorce lawyers, for example, must be some of the most cynical people. in terms of relationships, because you see these patterns over and over and over.
And wouldn't you think so? The other individual, the one that this hurting person has fallen in love with, now they're supposed to be responsible for solving all your problems,
Yes.
which they're incapable of doing because they've entered the relationship with their own past experiences.
Yeah.
And this is a great topic, and one that every one of us can relate to in some form or another. The other thing I loved about this interview was your question that said about flipping the script. So Agatha Christie disappeared for 11 days. It's a mystery. We still don't know exactly why. It's fun to hypothesize this and
Yes.
different reasons. But is this something that we all wish we could do? You know this book, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty? I think I had to read that in high school and actually loved it. And he more lives a fantasy world. He's not really leaving anywhere, but he's pretending to leave anywhere. I guess at some point in all of our lives, we wish we could get away.
Yeah. Well, think about it. When you respond to something, a stimulus of some kind, something that is shocking or jolting, we have that flight or fight response. And I think that flight response is very much escape, right? Think of how people escape, whether into a fantasy world or they escaped in an emotional way. Here we may have had a character who escaped in a physical way, and that is literally flipped the script, got out of town, and went somewhere else and became someone else for a period of time. And do we all long to do that? I am sure we do. I mean, I joke about this all the time. I might be a little bit of a redneck. I will have to say this. I have a pickup truck. It's something. I'm a country music fan. In fact, that's going to be my celebrity crush. I'm going to tell you later. But to me, that is something that gives me a lot of joy and energy. And I don't think it's necessarily escapism, but it is a time for you to kind of step out of maybe those roles that you are, going through every single day, all day, as lawyer, mother, whatever, teacher.
Yes. And if you think you don't want to flip the switch, you do. Because isn't this why we see a movie, read a book, take a vacation? We want to be somewhere else or be someone else for a little bit of time. And that's what I love about books. That's what Kristen and I love about books. So, okay, last episode, I don't know how we got on this, but we talked about celebrity crushes, and Kristen couldn't think of one. Have you come up with one?
Well, it's not that I couldn't think of one. I was so stunned by yours that I was still processing. Oh, for me, it's going to be somebody in country music like Brantley Gilbert or Jason Aldean or Eric Church. There's just no question those three,
Okay, there you go. So Tyler Perry and Jason Aldean, if you're listening, come on Bookstore Podcast. We love you.
And Chris, I got to say one more thing. You were talking about how you are a person who really picks up on clues very quickly. I have to say, sometimes it's a little hard reading books with you because you are very quick. And you'll call me up. Chris calls me up. She'll send me a text. Do you see this developing? Because we read books. We read every book. We read every word of every book. And a lot of times as we're reading, we're communicating about it. And sometimes you do spoil it for me because I haven't gotten that far.
I'm sorry. I'll try not to.
No, it's okay. I love seeing if your predictions come true. That actually is one of the most fun things of doing this with you.
And I do want to say to our readers, we're in, I think 50 states now, including I think we're up to 10 different countries, and we are a different kind of podcast. We do New York Times bestsellers, Amazon bestsellers, USA Today bestsellers, but we vet these books. We read each one. We are offered advance copies from publicists and publishers all over, and we tell them, yes, we're going to read it. And then we decide if this is a book that represents what we're doing. We do a deep dive into fiction that is life-changing, fiction that matters, things that stay with you long after the last page is turned. And I think that's the secret to why we've been so successful to date. So I just want to say, in closing, thank you for joining us. Going to give another shout out to our incredibly talented sound engineer. Now, last episode, I asked him for words of wisdom. Mark, come on over here. You got any words of wisdom from our We'd Be Nowhere Without This Guy?
I believe I do have some words of wisdom. It would be, I cannot remember the books I have read or the meals I have eaten. Nonetheless, they have made me.
Whoa, all right,
like
there
that
you
quote.
go. So here we got a couple of older women and a young, super cool kid, and he's giving you the words of wisdom. take it with you. I love it. Can't wait for next time. So we're leaving you with a few storm predictions to pique your interest, or maybe you'd even like to read ahead. Our spring lineup is phenomenal. We have the wonderful Adriana Trajani and her book, The Good Left Undone. The brilliant Laura Morelli and her novel, The Stolen Lady. The heartwarming Heather Morris and her wonderful tale, The Three Sisters. We have our beloved Francine Rivers and her novel, The Lady's Mine, and Teresa Ann Fowler with our much anticipated It All Comes Down to This. In the meantime, stay on the radar with us. Check out our website, our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or better yet, visit us on YouTube and see our wonderful author in person.
Until next time, one of the best ways to brave the storm is to dive down deep into life-changing fiction.